The house was a sleeping giant, breathing softly in the pre-dawn quiet. Every creak of the old floorboards, every distant hum of the refrigerator, seemed amplified in the profound stillness. Outside, a gentle, persistent rain whispered against the window panes, a rhythmic lullaby to the world. Inside, a different kind of quiet reigned, the heavy, expectant hush that precedes a momentous occasion. Tomorrow my cousin Ilara would walk down the aisle, her life forever changed. Everyone was asleep, lost in dreams of white dresses and hopeful futures. Everyone, it seemed, except her and me. When the soft, hesitant knock came at my door, a sound barely louder than the rain, I thought it was just nerves, a bride-to-be seeking comfort in the dark. But what she whispered in the hushed intimacy of that night wasn't about vows or love, not in the way I understood it. It was a secret so raw, so dangerously honest, that it burned through every line we were never supposed to cross, igniting a fire in the quiet corners of my soul. Her eyes, luminous in the dim light, held a question I couldn't answer, and before the night was over, I realized some confessions don't fade, they ignite. If you've ever felt the unsettling weight of a forbidden truth, or the quiet dread of a moment that changes everything, then you're in the right place. Hit that subscribe button right now, and join me as we uncover the truth behind that silent night. You won't want to miss a single chapter of this story. My name is Caleb, and I'm 30 years old. I work as a landscape architect in Portland, Oregon, a city where the rain is as much a part of the landscape as the towering fir trees. My life, by most measures, was stable, predictable, and comfortably solitary. I enjoyed my work, the quiet satisfaction of shaping natural spaces, and the freedom of my own company. I had a small, close-knit family, but geographical distance often kept us apart. This weekend, however, was different. It was Ilara's wedding. My cousin, Ilara. She was more than just a cousin. She was the closest thing I had to a sister. Growing up in the same small town in upstate New York, we were inseparable. Summers spent exploring the woods behind our grandparents' house, winters building snow forts, sharing secrets under starry skies. She was the adventurous one, the dreamer, with a spirit as wild and free as the wind. I was the quieter, more introspective counterpart, always a step behind, watching, admiring. Ilara, now 29, was marrying Reese. Reese was, by all accounts, a good man, a successful software engineer, steady, kind, and deeply devoted to Ilara. He had a calm demeanor that balanced Ilara's effervescence and a quiet strength that seemed to ground her. They had been together for 5 years, a whirlwind romance that had blossomed into a deep, enduring love. Their wedding, set to take place at a picturesque vineyard just outside Saratoga Springs, was the culmination of that love, a celebration of their future. The entire family had converged on my Aunt Vivian and Uncle Arthur's sprawling farmhouse, a beautiful old place with creaky floorboards and a wraparound porch nestled amidst rolling hills. Vivian, Ilara's mother and my aunt, was a whirlwind of nervous energy, overseeing every last detail with meticulous precision. Arthur, Ilara's father and my uncle, was the calm anchor, his quiet humor diffusing the pre-wedding jitters. My own brother Liam, a boisterous and charming sales executive, was also there, adding to the general chaos and laughter. I had arrived 2 days early, eager to help with the preparations and spend time with family I rarely saw. The house was a hive of activity, caterers bustling in and out, florists arranging bouquets, distant relatives arriving with suitcases and warm hugs. Amidst the joyful chaos, I found myself observing Ilara. She was radiant, of course, glowing with the excitement of a bride-to-be. But beneath the surface, I sensed a subtle current of something else, a flicker of apprehension in her eyes that I couldn't quite place. I dismissed it as pre-wedding jitters, a natural anxiety before such a monumental life change. The night before the wedding, a Friday, was meant to be a quiet family dinner, a final moment of calm before the storm of celebration. We gathered around the large farmhouse table, sharing stories, laughter, and my Aunt Vivian's legendary lasagna. Ilara and Reese sat side by side, their hands clasped under the table, exchanging loving glances. Everything seemed perfect, a picture of idyllic happiness. After dinner, as the last of the dishes were cleared, the family began to disperse. My Uncle Arthur and Aunt Vivian retired to their room, exhausted from the day's preparations. Liam, my brother, went out with some of Reese's groomsmen for a last night of freedom toast. Reese, ever the responsible one, decided to get an early night, wanting to be fresh for the big day. He kissed Ilara goodnight, a tender, lingering kiss, and headed to the guest room he was sharing with his best man. I retreated to my own room, a cozy space on the second floor, overlooking the sprawling backyard. I wasn't tired. The anticipation of the wedding, combined with the lingering hum of family chatter, kept my mind buzzing. I picked up a book, a historical fiction novel, hoping to lose myself in its pages. The rain had started, a soft, steady patter against the window. It was well past midnight when I heard it, a soft, hesitant knock at my door. My brow furrowed. Who could it be? Everyone was asleep. I glanced at the clock on my bedside table. 1:17 a.m. I got up, my bare feet silent on the cool hardwood floor, and opened the door a crack. It was Ilara. She stood in the dimly lit hallway, a faint sliver of light from the distant bathroom illuminating her. She was wearing a simple white silk robe, her dark hair falling in soft waves around her shoulders. Her face was pale, her eyes wide and luminous, filled with an expression I couldn't quite decipher. It wasn't just nervousness. It was something deeper, more profound, a mixture of fear and desperation. "Caleb," she whispered, her voice barely audible, a fragile thread in the profound quiet of the house. Can I talk to you?" My heart gave a sudden, unexpected lurch. A jolt of surprise mixed with a vague sense of unease. "Ilara, what's wrong? Is everything okay?" I opened the door wider, letting her step into the room. She walked in, her movements slow and deliberate, and stood just inside the doorway, her back to the closed door. The rain outside continued its gentle drumming, a rhythmic counterpoint to the sudden, unsettling silence in my room. "No," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Nothing's okay, Caleb, not really." She paused, her gaze fixed on mine, unwavering. Her eyes, those familiar, beautiful eyes, were filled with a raw, desperate pain. "What is it?" I asked, my voice low, filled with concern. "Are you having second thoughts about Reese? Is it cold feet?" I tried to keep my tone light, to offer a comforting explanation for her distress. She shook her head, a bitter, humorless smile touching her lips. "No, it's not cold feet, Caleb. It's something else. Something I haven't told anyone." My brow furrowed in confusion, even as a cold dread began to creep up my spine. The air in the room grew heavy, thick with unspoken emotions, with questions that hung suspended between us. "Ilara," I urged, my voice gentle. "You can tell me anything. You know that." She took a deep, shaky breath, her chest rising and falling visibly beneath the silk robe. Her gaze drifted to the window, then back to me, her eyes searching mine as if seeking reassurance, seeking permission. I've done something, Caleb," she confessed, her voice barely audible, a fragile whisper that seemed to hang in the air, suspended between us. "Something terrible, something I can't undo." The words hit me with the force of a physical blow, knocking the air from my lungs. My breath hitched. Terrible? What could Ilara, my sweet, kind, adventurous cousin, have done that was so terrible? My mind raced, trying to comprehend the implications of her words, of her presence, of the profound silence that had preceded them. "What are you talking about?" I managed, my voice hoarse, barely a whisper. She looked away for a moment, her gaze drifting to the dark window, then back to me. Her eyes were filled with a complex mixture of fear, longing, and a desperate plea. I slept with someone else, Caleb," she whispered, her voice cracking, a single tear escaping and tracing a path down her cheek. "Last night with Liam." The words hit me like a lightning bolt, shattering the last vestiges of my composure. Liam, my brother, her fiancé's best man. The thought was so utterly unthinkable, so monstrously wrong, that my mind struggled to process it. My own brother, with my cousin, the night before her wedding to his friend? I stumbled back a step, my hand instinctively reaching out to steady myself against the wall. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the sudden, deafening silence. The rain outside seemed to intensify, drumming a furious rhythm against the window. "What?" I gasped, the word escaping my lips in a disbelieving whisper. "Ilara, what are you saying? Liam? My brother?" She nodded, her face crumpled, tears now streaming down her cheeks. "Yes, Liam. It was a mistake, Caleb. A terrible, horrible mistake. We were both drunk. It just happened." Her confession hung in the air, a toxic cloud that poisoned the quiet intimacy of my room. The comfortable facade of our family, the carefully constructed illusion of normalcy, had just cracked wide open, revealing a dark, festering secret beneath. If you're as shocked by this revelation as Caleb, please consider hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support helps us create more compelling stories. My mind reeled, a whirlwind of shock, disbelief, and a profound sense of betrayal. Not just betrayal of Reese, but a betrayal of our family, of the trust we all placed in each other. Liam, my brother, the charming, boisterous one capable of such a heinous act, and Ilara, my sweet, kind cousin, caught in this impossible web. How could you? I stammered, the words escaping before I could filter them. The anger, the raw, visceral anger surged through me, momentarily eclipsing the shock. I don't know, Caleb, she sobbed, her voice filled with self-loathing. I don't know. I feel so disgusted with myself, so ashamed. I love Reese, Caleb, I truly do. This means nothing. It was just a moment of weakness, a terrible, terrible lapse in judgment. Her words, meant to explain, only deepened the chasm of my confusion. How could a moment of weakness erase years of love, years of commitment? How could she stand there hours before her wedding, confessing such a devastating secret? Does Liam know you're telling me this? I asked, my voice tight, my jaw clenched. She shook her head. No, he's still asleep, I think. He probably doesn't even remember half of it. I couldn't keep it in anymore, Caleb. I'm going crazy. I have to tell someone. And you're the only one I could trust. Her trust, placed so heavily upon me, felt like an unbearable weight. I was caught in an impossible dilemma. My cousin, my almost sister, had just confessed a secret that would shatter her fiancé's world, destroy my brother's reputation, and tear our family apart. And I was now privy to it, a silent, unwilling accomplice. What do you want me to do, Ilara? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, filled with a desperate plea for clarity. She looked at me, her eyes wide and searching, filled with a complex mixture of fear, guilt, and a desperate hope. I don't know, Caleb. I honestly don't know. I can't marry Reese tomorrow knowing this. I can't, but I don't know how to tell him. I don't know how to face everyone. Her vulnerability, her raw honesty, pierced through my anger and shock. I saw not just a cousin who had made a terrible mistake, but a woman in profound distress, a woman trapped in a nightmare of her own making. The fire she spoke of, the one that ignited within me, was not just anger but a dangerous, unsettling mix of compassion, fear, and a terrifying awareness of the impossible situation we were now both in. If you're on the edge of your seat, wondering what Caleb will do, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us create more compelling stories. The silence returned, but this time it was different. Less suffocating, more intimate. It was a silence filled with shared understanding, with the weight of a secret now entrusted to me. The rain outside continued its relentless drumming, a soundtrack to the unraveling of our lives. I looked at Ilara, her face pale and tear-streaked, her eyes pleading. The image of her standing there in her white silk robe, hours before her wedding, confessing such a devastating truth, would forever be etched in my mind. It was a moment of profound vulnerability, a moment that stripped away all pretense, all comfortable illusions. We'll figure it out, Ilara, I said, my voice firm, though my heart was pounding. We'll figure it out together. The words were a promise, a commitment to navigate this impossible situation, to protect her, even if it meant sacrificing everything. The comfortable facade of our family, the carefully constructed illusion of normalcy, had indeed cracked wide open. And I, Caleb, was now inextricably caught in the fallout, burdened by a secret that threatened to consume me, a secret that had irrevocably altered the landscape of my life and the very fabric of my family. The night before my cousin's wedding, her confession had indeed set me on fire, and I knew with a chilling certainty that my life and the lives of everyone in this house were about to be irrevocably altered. The journey ahead was uncertain, fraught with emotional landmines, and I knew with a chilling certainty that the quiet night in my room had indeed changed everything, forever. We'll figure it out, Ilara, I said, my voice firm, though my heart was pounding. We'll figure it out together. The words were a promise, a commitment to navigate this impossible situation, to protect her, even if it meant sacrificing everything. The comfortable facade of our family, the carefully constructed illusion of normalcy, had indeed cracked wide open. And I, Caleb, was now inextricably caught in the fallout, burdened by a secret that threatened to consume me, a secret that had irrevocably altered the landscape of my life and the very fabric of my family. The night before my cousin's wedding, Her confession had indeed set me on fire, and I knew with a chilling certainty that my life and the lives of everyone in this house were about to be irrevocably altered. The journey ahead was uncertain, fraught with emotional landmines, and I knew with a chilling certainty that the quiet night in my room had indeed changed everything, forever. The rain outside continued its relentless drumming, a rhythmic counterpoint to the frantic pounding of my heart. Ilara stood before me, her face pale and tear-streaked, her eyes wide with a desperate plea. Her confession, a toxic cloud, filled the small room, suffocating me with its implications. Liam, my brother, with Ilara, the night before her wedding. The sheer enormity of it threatened to crush me. "What do we do, Caleb?" she whispered, her voice fragile, breaking the heavy silence. "I can't marry Rhys. Not now. Not with this." Her words, though filled with despair, brought a sliver of clarity. The wedding, scheduled for tomorrow afternoon, was now an impossibility. But how do you stop a wedding just hours before it's set to begin, without revealing a secret that would devastate everyone involved? My mind raced, trying to construct a plan, any plan, that didn't involve an immediate explosion. "First," I said, my voice low and steady, trying to project a calm I didn't feel, "we need to get you some rest. You're exhausted, Ilara. We can't make any decisions when you're like this." She shook her head, a fresh wave of tears welling in her eyes. "I can't sleep, Caleb. How can I sleep? I feel like I'm going to throw up." "Just try," I urged, guiding her gently towards the armchair in my room. "Sit down, breathe, we'll figure this out, but you need a clear head." She sank into the armchair, pulling her knees to her chest, her arms wrapped around herself as if to hold her shattered pieces together. I sat on the edge of my bed, watching her, my own thoughts a chaotic storm. Liam, my brother, the charming, boisterous, seemingly carefree Liam. How could he have done this, and how could Ilara, who genuinely loved Rhys, have allowed it to happen? The questions swirled unanswered, fueling my anger and confusion. "Does Liam remember?" I asked, the question feeling like a betrayal even as I spoke it. Ilara flinched. "I don't know," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "He was so drunk. We both were. He just kept saying how beautiful I was, how he'd always loved me. And I don't know, Caleb. I was scared, nervous about tomorrow, and he was just there." Her voice trailed off, filled with a profound self-loathing. The words, "he'd always loved me," hung in the air, a new, unsettling layer to the already toxic secret. Had Liam harbored feelings for Ilara all this time? Feelings he had kept hidden, only to unleash them in a drunken, destructive moment? The thought was a bitter pill to swallow. "We need to talk to him," I stated, my voice firm. "Before anyone else wakes up, we need to know what he remembers, what he thinks." Ilara's eyes widened in fear. "No, Caleb, please, he'll deny it. He'll make it worse. And if Rhys finds out, I can't. I just can't. We have to, Ilara," I insisted, my voice gentle but resolute. "We can't go into this blind. We need to understand the full picture." The decision was made. As the first faint streaks of dawn began to lighten the sky, painting the eastern horizon in soft hues of pink and orange, I left Ilara in my room, promising to return. My heart pounded, with a mixture of dread and grim determination as I crept down the hallway towards Liam's room. I found him sprawled across the bed, snoring softly, a half-empty glass of water on his bedside table. The room smelled faintly of stale beer. He looked utterly oblivious, innocent in his drunken slumber. The sight of him, so peaceful while Ilara was in agony, ignited a fresh wave of anger within me. I shook him gently, then more firmly. "Liam, wake up," he groaned, stirring slowly, his eyes fluttering open. "What? Caleb, what time is it? What's going on?" His voice was thick with sleep and a hangover. "It's early," I said, my voice low and controlled, "and we need to talk. Now." He sat up, rubbing his eyes, a confused frown on his face. "Talk about what? Did I miss something?" I looked at him, searching his eyes for any flicker of memory, any hint of guilt. There was nothing but confusion and the dull ache of a hangover. "Liam," I began, my voice tight, "do you remember anything from last night? After everyone went to bed?" He paused, his brow furrowed in thought. Not really. Had a few too many with Ben and Rhys's groomsmen. Came back, crashed. Why? Did I do something stupid?" He chuckled, a self-deprecating laugh that grated on my nerves. "Yes, Liam," I said, my voice devoid of humor. "You did something stupid, something unforgivable." His smile faded. He looked at me, sensing the gravity in my tone. "What are you talking about, Caleb?" "You slept with Ilara, Liam," I stated, the words feeling like a punch to my own gut. "Last night, hours before her wedding." The color drained from his face. His eyes, which had been dull with sleep, suddenly widened in horror. The confusion was replaced by a dawning, sickening realization. "No," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "No, I didn't. That's impossible." "She told me, Liam," I said, my gaze unwavering. "She's in my room right now, terrified, disgusted with herself, and she can't go through with the wedding." Liam stared at me, his face a mask of utter shock and disbelief. He ran a hand through his hair, his eyes darting around the room as if searching for an escape. "Oh my God," he muttered, his voice hoarse. "Oh my God, I don't remember. I was so drunk. I remember talking to her, telling her she looked beautiful, and then, I don't know, it's all a blur." The denial, the convenient blur, infuriated me. "A blur, Liam? You think a blur is an excuse for this? For betraying your best friend? For destroying Ilara's life? For tearing our family apart?" He flinched, his shoulders slumping. "I didn't mean to, Caleb. I swear. I would never. I love Rhys, he's my friend. And Ilara, she's my cousin. This is a nightmare." His remorse, though seemingly genuine, felt hollow in the face of the devastation he had wrought. "It is a nightmare, Liam," I agreed, my voice cold. "And now we have to figure out how to wake up from it. If you're feeling the weight of this family's unraveling, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us tell these complex human stories." We talked for what felt like an eternity, Liam alternating between panicked denial, desperate apologies, and a profound sense of shame. He was a broken man, confronted with the monstrous consequences of his drunken actions. He admitted to having always had a soft spot for Ilara, a childhood crush that had never quite faded, but he swore he had never acted on it, never intended to. The alcohol, the pre-wedding tension, the proximity, it had all converged into a catastrophic lapse in judgment. "What do we do?" he finally asked, his voice raw with despair. "We can't tell Rhys. It'll destroy him. It'll destroy everything." "Ilara can't marry him, Liam," I stated, my voice firm. "She won't, and she shouldn't." "But the wedding," he pleaded. "The guests, Aunt Vivian, Uncle Arthur, it's tomorrow. How do we stop it without telling them why?" That was the impossible question. How do you halt a wedding, a meticulously planned celebration of love, without revealing a secret that would shatter everyone's world? I returned to my room, Liam's despair echoing in my ears. Ilara looked up, her eyes questioning. "Well, he remembers some of it," I said, my voice heavy. He's devastated, ashamed." "What do we do, Caleb?" she repeated, her voice laced with a desperate urgency. "I can't face Rhys, I can't lie to him, but I can't tell him the truth either." The clock was ticking. Hours, not days, separated us from the ceremony. The entire family would be waking up soon, filled with joyful anticipation. We had to act, and we had to act fast. "We need to postpone the wedding," I said, the words feeling inadequate, almost absurd in the face of the truth. "We need to come up with a reason, a believable reason, that doesn't involve Liam." Ilara stared at me, her eyes wide. "Postpone? But why? What reason?" "We'll say you're sick," I suggested, the lie feeling like ash in my mouth. "A sudden, severe stomach flu. Something that makes it impossible for you to stand at the altar, but isn't life-threatening. It'll buy us time." She hesitated, her gaze fixed on mine. "Rhys will be worried. Aunt Vivian will be frantic." "It's the only way, Ilara," I insisted. "It's the only way to stop the wedding without blowing everything up right now. It gives us time to figure out the next step, to tell Rhys the truth in a way that's as gentle as possible." She nodded slowly, a profound weariness settling over her. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay. A stomach flu." The plan, flimsy as it was our only option. I helped Ilara compose a text message to Rhys, a short apologetic note about a sudden, debilitating illness. She sent it, her hand trembling. Then she called her mother, Aunt Vivian, her voice feigning weakness, explaining her sudden incapacitation. Aunt Vivian, as expected, was immediately frantic, rushing to Ilara's room with remedies and worried questions. The house, which had been so quiet, suddenly sprang to life with a different kind of energy. Not joyful anticipation, but worried concern. The news of Ilara's illness spread like wildfire. Rhys, distraught, rushed to her side, his face etched with worry. He tried to comfort her, to reassure her, completely oblivious to the true reason behind her sudden withdrawal. I watched the scene unfold from the periphery, a silent observer, my heart heavy with the weight of our deception. The lie, though necessary, felt like a fresh wound, a new layer of betrayal. Liam, pale and shaken, kept to his room, avoiding everyone, his guilt a palpable presence. The wedding was officially postponed. The caterers were called, the florist informed, the guests notified. The air of celebration was replaced by a somber quiet, a collective disappointment that hung heavy over the farmhouse. My Aunt Vivian and Uncle Arthur were devastated, but their concern for Ilara overshadowed their disappointment. As the day wore on and the initial chaos subsided, I found myself alone with Ilara again, in the quiet sanctuary of her room. Rhys had finally been persuaded to rest, his worry still evident. "What now, Caleb?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper, her eyes filled with a profound sadness. "How do I tell him? How do I ever look him in the eye again?" The question hung in the air, heavy and unanswered. The postponement had bought us time, but it had also prolonged the agony, the inevitable confrontation. The truth, when it finally came out, would be devastating. It would shatter Rhys's world, destroy Liam's reputation, and irrevocably alter the fabric of our family. I looked at Ilara, her face pale and drawn, her eyes still holding that desperate plea. The fire she spoke of, the one that ignited within me, was no longer just anger or compassion. It was a terrifying sense of responsibility, a profound understanding of the impossible choices we sometimes face, and the devastating consequences of a single, drunken mistake. The night before her wedding, Ilara's confession had indeed set me on fire. And now, as the sun began to set on what should have been her wedding day, I knew that the true inferno was yet to come. The journey ahead was uncertain, fraught with emotional landmines, and I knew with a chilling certainty that the quiet night in my room had indeed changed everything, forever. The secret, once whispered in the dark, was now a ticking time bomb, threatening to explode and consume us all. "What now, Caleb?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper, her eyes filled with a profound sadness. "How do I tell him? How do I ever look him in the eye again?" The question hung in the air, heavy and unanswered. The postponement had bought us time, but it had also prolonged the agony, the inevitable confrontation. The truth, when it finally came out, would be devastating. It would shatter Rhys's world, destroy Liam's reputation, and irrevocably alter the fabric of our family. I looked at Ilara, her face pale and drawn, her eyes still holding that desperate plea. The fire she spoke of, the one that ignited within me, was no longer just anger or compassion. It was a terrifying sense of responsibility, a profound understanding of the impossible choices we sometimes face, and the devastating consequences of a single, drunken mistake. The night before her wedding, Ilara's confession had indeed set me on fire. And now, as the sun began to set on what should have been her wedding day, I knew that the true inferno was yet to come. The journey ahead was uncertain, fraught with emotional landmines, and I knew with a chilling certainty that the quiet night in my room had indeed changed everything, forever. The secret, once whispered in the dark, was now a ticking time bomb, threatening to explode and consume us all. The days that followed the postponed wedding were a strange, unsettling limbo. The festive atmosphere of the farmhouse had evaporated, replaced by a somber quiet, punctuated by hushed conversations and worried glances. Aunt Vivian, Ilara's mother, was a whirlwind of maternal concern, constantly checking on Ilara, offering remedies for her stomach flu, and fretting over the rescheduled plans. Uncle Arthur, usually so jovial, moved through the house with a heavy heart, his brow furrowed with unspoken worry. Rhys, the unsuspecting groom, was a picture of quiet devastation. He hovered around Ilara, his eyes filled with a mixture of concern and disappointment. He brought her flowers, offered to cook, and sat by her bedside, holding her hand, completely oblivious to the true reason behind her sudden illness. His unwavering devotion, his genuine love only amplified the crushing weight of the secret we carried. Every kind word he spoke, every tender glance he gave Ilara, felt like a fresh stab of guilt. Ilara, trapped in her room, played the part of the ailing bride with a heartbreaking conviction. Her face was genuinely pale, her eyes shadowed from lack of sleep and emotional turmoil. She accepted Rhys's comfort with a forced smile, her heart breaking with every lie she uttered. The strain was immense, and I could see her slowly unraveling under the pressure. Liam, my brother, was a ghost in the house. He barely left his room, emerging only for quick, furtive trips to the kitchen, avoiding eye contact with everyone. His usual boisterous charm had vanished, replaced by a profound shame that clung to him like a shroud. I saw him once late at night, sitting alone on the porch staring out into the darkness, his shoulders slumped in defeat. The sight of his raw guilt offered little comfort. The damage was done. My own role in this unfolding drama was that of a silent observer, a confidant, and a co-conspirator. I spent hours with Ilara, listening to her fears, helping her navigate the emotional minefield of Rhys's concern and her parents' worried questions. We spoke in hushed tones, planning, strategizing, trying to find the least destructive path forward. "I can't keep lying to him, Caleb," Ilara whispered one afternoon, her voice hoarse, her eyes red-rimmed. "Every time he looks at me, every time he touches me, I feel like a monster. He deserves the truth." "He does," I agreed, my voice gentle, "but we need to tell him in a way that protects you, Ilara, and gives him space to process it." We decided that Ilara would tell Rhys herself as soon as she felt strong enough. I would be there, not in the room, but nearby for support. Liam, we agreed, would have to face the consequences of his actions, but Ilara's immediate safety and emotional well-being were our priority. The timing was crucial. We couldn't let the lie fester for too long, but we also couldn't drop such a bombshell without careful preparation. The opportunity arose 3 days after the postponement. The family had mostly dispersed, leaving only Aunt Vivian, Uncle Arthur, Rhys, Ilara, Liam and me at the farmhouse. The air was still heavy, but a fragile sense of normalcy had begun to settle. Rhys, still worried, suggested a quiet walk through the vineyard, hoping the fresh air would do Ilara good. Ilara looked at me, her eyes filled with a desperate plea. I gave her a subtle nod, a silent message of support. This was it. "Rhys," Ilara said, her voice trembling slightly, "can we talk? Just us?" Rhys, ever gentle, smiled warmly. "Of course, my love. Anything you need." He had no idea the conversation that was about to unfold would shatter his world. They walked out hand in hand towards the rolling hills of the vineyard. I watched them go, my heart pounding. Liam, who had been lurking in the kitchen, also watched, his face pale, his eyes filled with a profound dread. He knew what was coming. Aunt Vivian and Uncle Arthur were in the living room, reading. I couldn't bring myself to join them. I paced the kitchen, the silence of the house amplifying the frantic drumbeat of my own anxiety. Liam, unable to bear the suspense, joined me, leaning against the counter, his head in his hands. "She's telling him, isn't she?" he muttered, his voice hoarse. "Yes," I replied, my voice tight. "She is." The wait was agonizing. Every minute stretched into an eternity. I imagined the conversation unfolding, the initial confusion, the dawning horror, the inevitable pain. I pictured Rhys's face, his kind eyes clouding with betrayal, his gentle demeanor replaced by shock and anger. The thought was almost unbearable. If you're on the edge of your seat wondering how Rhys will react, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us create more compelling stories. After what felt like an hour, though it was probably only 20 minutes, we heard it. A distant shout, a raw cry of pain and disbelief, echoing from the direction of the vineyard. It was Rhys. Liam flinched, his body tensing. I closed my eyes, a wave of profound sadness washing over me. The explosion had begun. Moments later, we saw them. Rhys was striding back towards the house, his face contorted in a mask of shock and fury. His usually composed features were twisted, his eyes wild with a pain so raw it was almost unbearable to witness. Ilara followed a few paces behind him, her shoulders slumped, her head bowed, her body language screaming of shame and despair. Rhys burst through the back door, his gaze immediately falling on Liam, who was still leaning against the kitchen counter, his eyes blazing with a terrible realization, fixed on my brother. "You!" Rhys roared, his voice thick with a mixture of rage and heartbreak. "You knew, didn't you? You knew about this!" Liam recoiled, his face paling further. "Rhys, I'm so sorry, I was drunk. It was a mistake." "A mistake?" Rhys scoffed, his voice dripping with venom. "A mistake? You slept with my fiancé, your best friend's fiancé, the night before our wedding, and you call it a mistake?" He lunged forward, his fists clenched, pure fury radiating from him. I instinctively stepped between them, my arms outstretched, blocking Rhys's path. "Rhys, stop! Don't! Get out of my way, Caleb," Rhys snarled, his eyes blazing. "He betrayed me, both of them did. Aunt Vivian and Uncle Arthur, drawn by the commotion, rushed into the kitchen, their faces etched with alarm. "What's going on?" Aunt Vivian cried, her voice trembling. "Rhys, Ilara, what happened?" Ilara, now standing in the doorway, her face streaked with tears, finally spoke, her voice a broken whisper. "I told him, Mom. I told him everything." The words hung in the air, a chilling pronouncement. Aunt Vivian gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Uncle Arthur stumbled back, his face ashen, his eyes wide with disbelief. The comfortable facade of our family, the carefully constructed illusion of normalcy, had finally shattered, irrevocably, for everyone. The scene devolved into a chaotic maelstrom of emotions. Rhys, heartbroken and furious, lashed out, demanding explanations, accusing Ilara of betrayal and Liam of an unforgivable act. Aunt Vivian wept openly, trying to comfort Ilara while simultaneously trying to comprehend the devastating truth. Uncle Arthur, usually so stoic, looked utterly bewildered, his gaze darting between his daughter, his future son-in-law, and his nephew. Liam, overwhelmed by guilt and Rhys's fury, could only offer broken apologies, his voice thick with shame. I stood there, a silent observer, trying to mediate, trying to protect Ilara, trying to prevent the situation from spiraling further out of control. "How could you, Ilara?" Aunt Vivian sobbed, her voice filled with a profound sense of disappointment and pain. "How could you do this to Rhys, to us?" "Mom, please," Ilara pleaded, her voice breaking. "It was a mistake. I never meant to hurt anyone." "A mistake that destroyed everything," Rhys roared, his voice cracking with emotion. "Everything we built, everything we planned." He turned to Liam, his eyes filled with a cold, hard fury. "And you, Liam, my best man, my friend, how could you look me in the eye knowing this? The accusations, the tears, the raw pain. It was a scene of utter devastation. The farmhouse, once filled with the promise of joy, was now a crucible of heartbreak and betrayal. If you're feeling the raw emotion of this family's unraveling, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us tell these complex human stories. After what felt like an eternity, Rhys, his face pale and drawn, finally turned to Ilara. His voice, though still filled with pain, was now quiet, almost resigned. "I can't do this, Ilara. I can't marry you. Not now. Not ever." The words, though expected, still landed with the force of a physical blow. Ilara flinched, a fresh wave of tears streaming down her face. The dream of their future, of their life together, had just been irrevocably extinguished. Rhys then turned to me, his eyes holding a complex mixture of anger and a strange, quiet understanding. "You knew, didn't you, Caleb? You knew all along." I met his gaze, my heart heavy. "Yes, Rhys," I admitted, my voice low. "I knew. Ilara told me. I was trying to help her figure out how to tell you, how to minimize the pain." He stared at me for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, with a sigh that seemed to carry the weight of the world, he simply nodded. "I understand," he said, his voice barely audible, "but it doesn't make it hurt any less." He turned and walked out of the house, his shoulders slumped, his once bright future shattered. The sound of his car starting, then driving away, echoed in the profound silence that descended upon the kitchen. Aunt Vivian collapsed into a chair, sobbing uncontrollably. Uncle Arthur put an arm around her, his own face a mask of grief and bewilderment. Ilara stood frozen, her eyes fixed on the empty doorway, her body trembling. Liam, still leaning against the counter, looked utterly broken, his head bowed in shame. I stood there, a silent witness to the wreckage, the weight of the secret, now fully exposed, pressing down on me. The fire Ilara's confession had ignited had indeed consumed everything, leaving behind only ashes and the bitter taste of regret. The comfortable, predictable patterns of my life and the lives of everyone in this house had been irrevocably shattered. The journey ahead was uncertain, fraught with emotional landmines, and I knew with a chilling certainty that the quiet night in my room had indeed changed everything. Forever. The secret, once whispered in the dark, had exploded, leaving behind a profound silence, a silence filled with the echoes of shattered dreams and unspoken pain. Rhys turned and walked out of the house, his shoulders slumped, his once bright future shattered. The sound of his car starting, then driving away, echoed in the profound silence that descended upon the kitchen. Aunt Vivian collapsed into a chair, sobbing uncontrollably. Uncle Arthur put an arm around her, his own face a mask of grief and bewilderment. Ilara stood frozen, her eyes fixed on the empty doorway, her body trembling. Liam, still leaning against the counter, looked utterly broken, his head bowed in shame. I stood there, a silent witness to the wreckage, the weight of the secret, now fully exposed, pressing down on me. The fire Ilara's confession had ignited had indeed consumed everything, leaving behind only ashes and the bitter taste of regret. The comfortable, predictable patterns of my life and the lives of everyone in this house had been irrevocably shattered. The journey ahead was uncertain, fraught with emotional landmines, and I knew with a chilling certainty that the quiet night in my room had indeed changed everything, forever. The secret, once whispered in the dark, had exploded, leaving behind a profound silence, a silence filled with the echoes of shattered dreams and unspoken pain. The days that followed Rhys's departure were a blur of grief, anger, and profound sadness. The farmhouse, once a beacon of family warmth and joyous anticipation, became a mausoleum of shattered dreams. The air was thick with unspoken accusations, with the heavy weight of what could have been. Aunt Vivian moved through the house like a ghost, her usual vibrant energy replaced by a deep maternal sorrow. She alternated between comforting Ilara, who remained locked in her room, and casting heartbroken glances at Liam, her nephew, whose actions had caused such devastation. Uncle Arthur, usually the family's stoic anchor, seemed to age years in a matter of days, his face etched with a bewildered pain. Ilara was a shell of her former self. The radiant bride-to-be had vanished, replaced by a fragile, guilt-ridden woman. She spent most of her time in her room, emerging only for meals, her eyes red-rimmed and swollen. The shame of her actions, the pain she had inflicted on Rhys, and the devastation she had brought upon her family weighed heavily on her. She felt like a pariah, an outcast, even though her parents tried their best to offer comfort and understanding. Liam, my brother, was equally shattered. He packed his bags the morning after the confrontation, his face pale and drawn, unable to face the family. He left a terse, tearful apology for Ilara and a mumbled, guilt-ridden explanation for Aunt Vivian and Uncle Arthur before driving away in silence. The shame was too much for him to bear, and he retreated to his own apartment, a self-imposed exile. My role in the immediate aftermath was one of quiet support. I stayed at the farmhouse for another week, helping Aunt Vivian and Uncle Arthur deal with the practicalities of a cancelled wedding, returning rentals, notifying guests, managing the fallout. But mostly I was there for Ilara. I sat with her for hours, listening to her pour out her heart, her guilt, her despair. I didn't offer platitudes. I simply listened, offering a steady presence, a silent acknowledgement of her pain. "I ruined everything, Caleb," she would often whisper, her voice raw. "I destroyed Rhys's life. I destroyed our family. I don't know how I'll ever live with myself." "You made a mistake, Ilara," I would gently remind her. "A terrible one, yes, but you're not a monster. And you're facing the consequences. That's the first step towards healing." I encouraged her to seek professional help, to talk to a therapist, to process the trauma and the guilt. She eventually agreed, a small flicker of hope in her eyes. It was a long road, I knew, but she was taking the first, difficult steps. The family dynamics were irrevocably altered. The easy camaraderie, the shared laughter, the comfortable familiarity. It was all gone, replaced by a palpable tension. Aunt Vivian and Uncle Arthur struggled to reconcile the image of their beloved daughter with the devastating truth of her actions. They loved her unconditionally, but the disappointment, the pain for Rhys was evident in their weary eyes. Their relationship with Liam became strained, marked by a deep sense of betrayal and a quiet, unspoken anger. My own relationship with Liam was fractured. We spoke occasionally, brief, stilted conversations filled with an awkward silence. He was consumed by his guilt, retreating further into himself. He lost touch with many of our mutual friends, unable to face their judgment or their questions. His career, once so promising, suffered as his focus and drive waned. He was a man haunted by his actions, struggling to find a path to redemption. I tried to reach out, to offer support, but the chasm between us, created by his betrayal and my complicity, felt too wide to bridge. Rhys, the innocent party in all of this, slowly began to heal. I heard through mutual friends that he had left town for a while, seeking solace and distance. He eventually returned, a quieter, more reserved man, but with a newfound strength. He never spoke to Ilara or Liam again, the wound too deep, the betrayal too profound. He eventually found love again, a quiet, gentle love that brought a measure of peace back into his life. I never spoke to him directly after that day, but I often thought of him, hoping he had found the happiness he deserved. If you're still feeling the weight of this family's journey, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us create more compelling stories. As the months turned into a year and then two, life slowly, painfully began to find a new rhythm. Ilara moved out of her parents' farmhouse, finding a small apartment in a nearby town. She immersed herself in her graphic design work, finding solace in creativity. She continued therapy, slowly shedding the layers of guilt and shame, learning to forgive herself. She was no longer the carefree dreamer I remembered from childhood, but a woman forged in fire, with a quiet resilience and a profound understanding of human fallibility. Our bond, once that of cousins, had deepened into a unique, unbreakable friendship, built on shared trauma and unwavering support. We were survivors, navigating the wreckage together. My own life had been irrevocably altered. The comfortable predictability I once cherished was gone, replaced by a deeper understanding of life's complexities, of the hidden currents that run beneath the surface of every relationship. The experience had forced me to confront difficult moral choices, to prioritize compassion and truth over comfortable deception. I learned that loyalty, while important, has its limits, and that sometimes the hardest choices are the most necessary. I continued my work as a landscape architect, finding a new appreciation for the resilience of nature, for the way life finds a way to grow even in the harshest of conditions. My relationship with my parents, Aunt Vivian and Uncle Arthur, slowly began to mend, though the shadow of what happened always lingered. We learned to navigate the unspoken, to find comfort in shared silence, and to cherish the moments of genuine connection. Liam eventually found a way to cope with his guilt. He moved to a different city, started a new life, and dedicated himself to volunteer work, seeking a path to atonement. We never fully reconciled, but there was a quiet understanding between us, a shared acknowledgement of the past, and a tentative hope for a future where forgiveness might one day be possible. Years later, I was back in Saratoga Springs for a family gathering, a much smaller, quieter affair. Ilara was there, her eyes still holding a hint of sadness, but also a profound peace. She was thriving, a successful designer, a woman who had rebuilt her life with courage and grace. Liam was not there, but his absence was no longer a gaping wound, but a quiet, accepted reality. As I stood on the porch of the old farmhouse, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and purple, I thought back to that night. The quiet house, the persistent rain, Ilara's whispered confession. It had been a moment of profound vulnerability, a moment that shattered my world and ignited a fire within me. That fire had burned through illusions, through comfortable lies, and through the very fabric of our family. But from the ashes, something new had emerged, a deeper understanding of love, of forgiveness, of resilience. The secret of that night, the night before my cousin's wedding, would forever be a part of me. It was a testament to the messy, unpredictable nature of human relationships, to the devastating consequences of a single mistake, and to the enduring power of truth, even when it hurts. It had set me on fire, yes, but in doing so, it had also illuminated a path towards a more authentic, more compassionate life. And as the stars began to emerge in the darkening sky, I knew that some confessions don't fade. They ignite, transforming everything in their wake, leaving behind a legacy of lessons learned and lives irrevocably yet profoundly changed. And that concludes our story. If you were as moved by Caleb's journey through loyalty, betrayal, and the courage to face devastating truths as I was, please give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more compelling and realistic stories like this one. Your support means the world and helps us create more content you'll love. Thank you for watching.